in resource mobilization for the American and the Caribbean, and I will be with you today in the second Fair of Innovative Experience FAO Transforma 2023. It is a pleasure, and I'm really happy to be with you these days. I'd like to thank you and would like to greet colleagues and all people who are connected. In this second year, we organized this event, and we are pleased to be able to share this exchange of experiences with the different countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, stimulating knowledge management in FAO. At this fair, we want to highlight the important role of our partners. We believe that collaboration is key for transformation to more efficient agri-food systems that are efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable systems in the region. We are grateful for this process. I will start by telling you about how this great event will take place. This is the first of 3 days in which we're going to share experiences until 12:30. We are live. It's 10 a.m. Santiago, Chile, till 2.5 more hours, and we'll get to know experiences framing in the better nutrition and better environment at FAO. We will be focusing on better nutrition and better environment. Tomorrow, the second day of September 14th, we will take a look at the work around better support, showing an experience of institutional improvements that has been implemented in FAO for the region, along with experiences that are linked to better production. And finally, on Friday, the last day of this series, we will introduce experience related to a better life, and we will learn in detail about 4 initiatives. We are also broadcasting on FAO's YouTube webpage and also on our Twitter at FAO Americas. You can interact directly in our Zoom and leave your questions in the transmission, and we will check them continuously. We have a team that is devoted to do that, and we will answer at the right times. In order to kick off this great event, I'd like you to listen to words of Mr. Mario Lubetkin, FAO Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean. Let's go with the video.
Estimadas y estimados participantes, les transmito una cordial bienvenida para la Feria FAO Transforma 2023. Nos encontramos en un momento crucial para la humanidad, menos de 7 años para el cumplimiento de los objetivos del desarrollo sostenible planteados en la Agenda 2030, por lo que cada una de nuestras decisiones y acciones tienen y tendrán un impacto importante en el entorno que compartimos y para las generaciones futuras. Los números presentados en el reciente informe del estado de la seguridad alimentaria y nutricional en el mundo, elaborado por la FAO y 4 agencias de Naciones Unidas,
and 4 United Nations agencies, is the evidence that 735 million people are still suffering from hunger. The situation in Latin America and the Caribbean is not different. The region is facing several challenges with persistence, such as the effects of a pandemic, COVID-19, and the Ukraine conflict have also contributed to a deterioration of the food and nutrition security of the population. Although Latin America and the Caribbean have shown the significant reduction in hunger figures and malnutrition in the world, there are still 43 million people who are undernourished. The region presents about $4 per situation. We have the responsibility of generating sustainable solutions to improve food security and nutrition through innovative and more efficient measures and actions. We must move towards agri-food systems that are inclusive and sustainable, recognize that their contributions as an engine of progress. In an ever-changing world, we need to rethink and transform our technical cooperation processes with greater innovation, consistency, and complementarity to meet the current challenges of feeding a growing population, preserving natural resources, and mitigating climate change. Through the FAO Transform Fair, we seek to foster greater exchange and coordination initiatives to strengthen knowledge management in our region and to bring the different work teams closer together through the exchange of lessons learned in similar and common contexts and realities. Um, I uh, I encourage you to recognize knowledge management as a capital generated in the teams through reflective and collaborative instances and facilitating its accessibility through the potential offered by digital platforms and thus promoting better quality and efficiency in terms of technical assistance and support that FAO provides to the different countries. Let us take this as a reference, inspiring experiences with a high potential for scaling up to the contribute to the shared challenges transforming agri-food systems frame within the four improvements defined in FAO strategic framework: a better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life. I'd like to highlight the support of the various partners and cooperating partners. Thanks to their collaborative work, we will continue to contribute to improving people's food security and nutrition, as well as their livelihoods, by moving more uh, towards the transformation of agri-food systems. Thank you for your support, government authorities, the representatives of the public and private sector, to cooperation partners and our work teams for their commitment to building a world in which food security and nutrition are guaranteed for all. Thank you very much. We'd like to thank uh, Mr. Lubitkin. Here it is clear the challenge that we face in uh, food security and nutrition security that we will be able to share through the presentation of different experiences. It is also clear the importance of FAOs for improvements, which seek the transformation towards more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems. Now we will go into the initiatives related to better nutrition. Jorge Ulises Gonzalez, who is the regional technical support to better nutrition in Latin America and the Caribbean. Good morning, Jorge. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today to introduce the great experiences that we have under better nutrition. Let's go with the better nutrition video.
Muchas gracias, Matías.
Thank you, Matthias. Good morning. Uh, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Better Nutrition section of this second version of the FAO Transforma Fair. I'm very happy to be chairing this session today, where we will share two inspiring experiences, their lessons learned, and the footprints they have left to transform our food systems. The impacts of COVID-19 and the economic and political context of recent years have highlighted the vulnerability of our food systems, increasing the number of people suffering from hunger in 2022, in contrast to the years prior to the pandemic. This is why we need to strengthen the foundations of our systems. And one way to do this by connecting knowledge and lessons learned that are generated in food and nutrition matters to be able to promote solutions in an articulated manner in the region. The projects to be presented in this segment address topics ranging from the articulation of the information related to school nutrition to the importance of partnership to achieve the food goals that we have set for the year 2030. For each initiative, we will present videos highlighting the main aspects of these projects, and we will feature comments from the teams and resource partners that make the development of these initiatives possible. Let me remind the panelists that you have 5 minutes to provide or to deliver your comments or impressions on the project in order to give more space, more time to the discussion segment. Later on, we will have a Q&A segment So you can leave your questions or comments in the Zoom question box. If you are watching the YouTube stream on the channel, for the benefit of time, we will only choose just a few questions for the panelists. If you wish to share your impressions on social networks, you can use the hashtag Feria FAO Transforma to continue the conversation online. In addition, all the videos presented today can be watched later on at the FAO website for the region. Next, we therefore start uh, uh, open this fair as a project originating from the Brazil FAO International Cooperation, which has been working with countries in the region for several years. I mean, the Sustainable School Feeding Network, RAES, developed in partnership with the Brazilian Cooperation Agency, the National Fund for the Development of Education, and FAO. This initiative promotes a space for the exchange of knowledge, experiences, and dissemination of information on school feeding in the region, with a view to strengthening and consolidating school feeding programs in Latin America and the Caribbean. Next, let me invite you to check the video that introduces this experience.
Desde el año 2018, el gobierno de Brasil impulsa la red de alimentación escolar sostenible.
Since 2018, the Brazilian government has promoted the Sustainable School Feeding Network, the RAES, in Latin America and the Caribbean. The RISE is the result of the efforts of the Brazil FAO International Cooperation Program for School Feeding and is implemented jointly by the Brazilian Cooperation Agency, the National Education Development Fund, and FAO. To create solutions to the challenges of school feeding in the region, RAES employs efforts to promote dialogue, build capacity, and exchange experiences information among managers and other professionals involved in the school feeding programs. One of the innovations of the network is the virtual platform available in 4 languages. The platform is an opportunity to share all relevant information on the school feeding situation throughout the region. There are publications, legislation, videos, training courses, interviews, news,
de iniciativas
articles,
exitosas
and
de
a
los
series
países,
of
entre otros. Todo esto desarrollado para promover más diálogo e intercambio entre los más de 20 países que forman parte
exchanges
de la
among the
RAES.
20 countries
Otra innovación
making up this
impulsada por la
network.
RAES para fortalecer
Another-
la alimentación escolar son las jornadas de capacitación de docentes. Estas jornadas están en marcha en más de 10 países para que los docentes puedan implementar acciones de educación alimentaria y nutricional junto a la población estudiantil. Una de las bases de este trabajo es la metodología de escuelas sostenibles desarrolladas por la Cooperación Brasil-FAO y gobiernos socios desde hace más de 10 años. Para ampliar la difusión de esta metodología, que ya está presente en 23.000 escuelas de América Latina y el Caribe, la RAES lanzó en 2023 una serie de podcasts. La serie es una nueva estrategia de información y capacitación que ofrece la oportunidad de profundizar aún más las habilidades profesionales por medio de contenidos en formatos digitales, como es el caso de los podcasts. Agradecemos a la alianza entre ABC, FND, FAO y gobiernos de los países socios por el apoyo a estas iniciativas que contribuyen para mejorar las vidas de los niños y niñas de América Latina y el Caribe.
video that really underscores the importance of developing tools and capacity to foster feeding programs at our schools. Now, I would like to give the floor to Nacha Veloso, who is the coordinator of the RAES program in Latin America and the Caribbean on behalf of FAO. I would like to remind the panelists they have 5 minutes for their presentation. So Nacha, go ahead. The floor is yours. Dear friends and colleagues, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm glad to be here with all of you today.
Quero felicitar a LAFAO por la iniciativa.
I would like to thank FAO for the opportunity because this is very valuable. We all have a plethora of challenging situations, as mentioned by our Assistant Director General. And when we all need to find sustainable solutions. So this fair is an opportunity for us to share inspiring experiences and solutions. Now, first, I would like to thank all of the individuals joining us here today, all of our colleagues, and Paula Barbieri, Ulysses, Matias, and everyone else who is joining us here today. I wanted to mention that well, many of you are already familiar with a very interesting topic that we have been working on for years, and that is school feeding. When we talk about school feeding, this is a topic that is cross-cutting. This is a topic that involves many different efforts and coordination, and as I mentioned, it's a mainstream cross-cutting topic that affects or that involves health, agriculture, and other areas. And this is also one way to reinforce the other sustainable development goals. Now, by providing children good quality and quantity food at their schools is one way for FAO to contribute to allowing children to exercise their right to decent food. Now, I would like to take a few moments to say that in order to develop a policy, we needed to focus on different methodologies and figure out how to best have dialogue between the ministers, vice ministers, the technicians. So this is a public policy and a program. So we need to work with national policies while also reinforcing the technical component. That's why what we are presenting here today is extremely valuable. And I will tell you why it's important to have this virtual platform. And then we can continue spreading the word, one could say, with regard to the technical components, the policy components, and again, reinforce this activity in more than 23 countries where it is already being undertaken. This platform allows us to reach more individuals, a greater audience, and provide access to anyone who would like to learn more about school feeding. With regard to teacher training, this is essential. This is a constant, ongoing activity because it's important to make sure that the technical foundations are there. The governments come and go, but the technical foundations must remain. So it's important to, unfortunately, the speaker's audio has been interrupted. And that is why we hire tutors, and that is why we roll out a series of actions that allow the countries to have a positive experience. We had a pilot program in El Salvador with teacher training. And why have we focused on this innovation that has been so successful? Well, because this is a quick, easy way to reach a broad audience. I'm referring to the platform. And this allows for modernization, it allows for learning best practices from others. So, dear colleagues, innovation and technical cooperation are very challenging. And that is why the experiences we are exchanging here today at the Fair of Inspiring Ideas will allow us to better meet the needs of the undernourished and underfed. I invite you to visit our platform, and it's www.
Muchas gracias,
raes.org. Thank you. Thank you, Nalta. Now I would like to give the floor to Paola Barbiere, who is an analyst of projects from the Brazilian Aid Agency, and she will provide us with her impressions of this program. Go ahead, Paola. Thank you, Ulysses. On behalf of the Brazilian government, it's an honor for the Brazilian Cooperation Agency and the Foreign Affairs Ministry, the coordinator of the International Technical Aid Agency for Brazil, to take part in this event. Thank you for. I wanted to congratulate FAO for this fabulous fair. I also wanted to greet the representatives of the FNDE who are joining us here today as well. FAO and the FNDE, as well as ABC, are jointly working on FAO cooperation agencies in school feeding. We have been at this for 15 years now in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we are very pleased to see that these cooperation actions related to RAES have been chosen by FAO as an innovative, inspiring experience. RAES has podcasts and teacher training sessions on the platform, and it's important to mention that this network was the response of the Brazilian government to a call from FAO to a call to action. So the network's mission has been to spread knowledge, to improve the nutrition and feeding of boys and girls throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as share experiences. So the goal has been to foster greater exchange and knowledge related to school feeding among the various actors in participating countries. This platform is available in Spanish, English, and Portuguese, and in fact has become a benchmark regional platform for school feeding. The podcasts are key to spread the word with regard to the methodologies employed throughout the various schools, and other topics of interest to the region are posted on the platform, such as human right to food, sustainable agriculture, among other concepts. Now, this tool is versatile, inclusive, and accessible. I would also like to mention that we have launched a new format to share good practices for the various cooperation activities coordinated by ABC. We have these virtual teacher training days, and these have reached more than 2,500 teachers in Colombia, Ecuador, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Peru, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and other countries. And this is only the first version. Now, this strategy has also involved a great deal of successful feedback, successful experience, and this is part of the program. This has a great deal of potential for further cooperation. Therefore, the network's activities allows us to share values, and as such, the members are involved in long-term initiatives, employing integrated strategies and actions, all of which makes it possible for us to find common solutions for the countries and to foster greater participation, sustainability, social impact, and realistic change. Now, the Brazilian FAO cooperative action has allowed for these strategies to be shared over many years and has furthered dialogue capacity as well. I would like to thank again you for the opportunity to share the successful experience of the RAES at the FAO Fair of Inspiring Experiences. Thank you. Thank you, Paola, for your comments. We hope that we are able to delve deeper into these concepts during the next sessions and have some time to refer to this topic. Next, we will take we address an initiative that has been developed in Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Chile, and Uruguay, and this corresponds to the agenda again, yes, for agri-food cooperatives promoted by FAO. which seeks to promote resilient agri-food systems by strengthening cooperatives throughout the region. To this end, they have developed a participatory process that has been key to promoting a model law project for cooperatives in the region, while at the same time moving towards the digital transformation of these organizations. So now I would like to show you the video of this initiative. Go ahead.
Las cooperativas son una pieza indispensable en el
Cooperatives
desarrollo
are a
económico
key
y social de los
component of the
países,
economic
generando
and social
empleos de
development
alta
of
calidad,
countries.
trabajo
They bring
decente
about
y
good
justicia
quality
social.
jobs,
Estas
decent work, and
organizaciones
social
contribuyen,
justice.
además, con
These
la reducción de la
organizations also
pobreza, el
contribute
hambre,
to
la inseguridad alimentaria y la protección del medio ambiente, impulsando cadenas de valor éticas y resilientes en armonía con su territorio. Solo en América Latina y el Caribe hay más de 28.000 cooperativas agropecuarias o rurales que cuentan con más de 6 millones de integrantes. La Oficina Regional de la FAO, a partir de su enfoque histórico de abordaje y promoción del cooperativismo, asume ahora el desafío de incorporar a su quehacer otras formas de cooperativas que participan de los sistemas agroalimentarios. Ampliando el mapa de actores y oportunidades de colaboración técnica, promueve hoy cooperativas agrarias, pecuarias, pesqueras, de trabajo, de salud, de vivienda, de ahorro y crédito, seguros, consumo, economía circular, comunitarias, de servicios y de educación, entre otras. En 2022, la Oficina Regional de la FAO realizó un proceso de consulta a diversos actores para la construcción del proyecto de ley modelo sobre cooperativas agroalimentarias de América Latina y el Caribe. El documento fue puesto recientemente a consideración del Parlamento Latinoamericano y Caribeño para promover la participación activa de la agricultura familiar en estos esquemas. La FAO también ha impulsado la transformación digital de las cooperativas de la región y la creación de emprendimientos tecnológicos. De esta forma, FAO dirige acciones para que las cooperativas sean más eficientes, inclusivas, resilientes y sostenibles. Una mirada transformadora, donde las cooperativas y las acciones colectivas son consideradas un modelo vigente y de futuro.
These constitute a model for the future. Very interesting. Thank you. Very interesting to see the social and technological innovations that are being launched under this project. Allow me to give the floor to Ignacio Moncayo, who is the coordinator of the agri-food cooperatives area for FAO's regional office. He will refer to this initiative. And again, I would just like to remind the panelists they only have 5 minutes for their comments. So go ahead, Ignacio. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to thank you again for this opportunity to share our agenda with you on agri-food cooperatives. These are related to transforming the agri-food cooperatives and agri-food area. We have tried to imprint a transformative approach to all of this. Let us begin with an inspiring quote from the former president of Uruguay, Pepe Mujica, which he announced at an FAO seminar back in 2020. Could you please share the entire screen with us? We're seeing your notes.
Ahí me parece que está. Ahora sí, adelante. Nos señalaba José Mujica.
In any event, Jose Mujica was mentioning the first plague of family farming, that the first plague of family farming needs to tackle is loneliness. Now, this call for attention arises in the midst of challenging contexts. which opens up interesting opportunities for inclusion. Now, in this context, I must say that the agri-food systems are very complex systems. They're based on a plethora of interactions. Dominant, concentrated, and strongly connected nodes generate fragile systems, specifically when facing crises. And this became quite evident during the pandemic and the so-called container crisis, which resulted in bottlenecks in Chinese ports, and all of this increased the cost of export logistics by up to 5 times. Now, this also had an impact on internal logistics costs, which added to additional price crises in fertilizers and agricultural inputs. So in short, a concentrated and not very resilient system ended up affecting all of its stakeholders, especially small-scale food suppliers and family farmers, and by extension, the final consumers. In other words, it affects all of us, but most importantly, it has an impact on the poorest. So what should we do to improve this situation? Well, let's start with encouraging the inclusion of new players or nodes to strengthen the system as a whole. And when I say new players, well, who should we call upon? Well, it's important to bear in mind that we must accelerate a path of transformation. So the answer to this is cooperatives. The cooperatives are an efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable solution for the various reasons that you can see on the screen. They are not a novelty nor a pilot model. They are strategically aligned with FAO's ideas and strategic framework, and there are millions of these cooperatives around the world, and they employ large numbers of individuals and actually generate significant income. They have been promoting sustainability principles since their founding as a movement from the Rochdale Pioneer Society in England back in 1844. Their values of mutual aid, mutual support, responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity were key in the past and will continue to be so in the future, which will be challenging. Around the world, there are more than 3 million cooperatives with more than 1 million members, employing 10% of the working population. The largest 300 cooperatives had a turnover of more than $2.17 trillion in 2020. Of the latter, 100 cooperatives are actually in the agri-food sector. In Latin America, the growth of the number of cooperatives has been driven in recent years by government policies and support channeled through these organizations. This is a growing sector, and as such requires new approaches to project its undeniable positive impacts. Now, again, in this challenging context, doing more of the same would lead us to continue having the same results. We wanted to broaden our approach based on an agenda driven by a technical cooperation project that has made it possible to promote sustainable cooperatives based on different actions. One, we have broadened the focus towards agri-food cooperatives and consider new actors that contribute to the agri-food system at different levels, such as production, labor, transport, savings, etc. In this way, we have broadened the contributions and impacts to more communities. Two, we have supported the updating of laws, regulations, and policies for the promotion and development of cooperatives. We have accompanied and contributed to the processes in Chile, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Uruguay, and by extension to the entire region by proposing a model law on agri-food cooperatives to the Parlatino. We have also strengthened ties with the International Cooperative Alliance and agricultural cooperative associations. We have supported actions that install cooperatives and associations as catalysts of trade opportunities based on sustainability through the promotion of groups of producers with geographical indications and designations of origin, inclusive production chains based on cooperative practices of sustainable production and consumption, as well as actions for the digital transformation of cooperatives. Finally, based on the exchange of experiences and the need to package associative actions, we seek to provide FAO technical teams and their counterparts with a cooperative toolbox for the various regional initiatives, programs, and projects with this component. In order to reinforce the relevance of this agenda, I would like to close with some emerging ideas that go beyond the traditional approach to cooperative development. For example, promoting the creation and strengthening of small agri-food cooperatives linked to family farming, replicating good practices for the cooperative retail industry, such as cooperative supermarkets and cooperative consumer cooperatives and their impact on access to food and links with family farming and suppliers. Promoting urban agriculture cooperatives and vertical agriculture in urban areas, encouraging new paradigms of cooperative-based startups, not just what we call unicorns, and digital platform cooperatives, and encourage legal and tax recognition of foreign cooperatives for the transformation of transnational cooperatives, and promoting the creation and operation of community territorial care economy cooperatives as well. Encouraging intercooperative circular economy strategies as well, and the provision of environmental services. In turn, there's a need to extend tax incentives to cooperative acts between members and cooperatives, and between cooperatives as well. This would be a fast track for concrete incentives for sustainable business practice. These are all among the many issues that cut across FAO's actions and regional initiatives. It is therefore a matter of activating a catalytic agenda of collective actions and synergies, thereby accelerating the transformation of agri-food systems. I would like to thank my colleagues who organized the FAO Transforms Fair, and I hope that our agenda will inspire new opportunities for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ignacio. I'd like to offer the floor now to Peter Moore, Technical Cooperation Program Officer of the FAO Regional Office, to give us some impressions on this project. The space is yours. Thank you, Jorge. I'm going to be very brief because we want to listen to specific experiences of how to transform agri-food systems. But even some of the best ideas need resources to show its benefits and to scale up their impact. The Technical Cooperation Program, which is the program that funds the program that Ignacio just presented, we'll call it the TCP because of its acronym. It's a fund of FAO that responds to the technical assistance request by the governments. The fund is not financed by a specific donor, but through the contribution and membership of the 194 countries that are affiliated to FAO. In total, the members contribute with about $1 billion every 2 years, of which 14% is reserved for the TCP. This amount, a region receives close to $20 million every 2 years for a total of 30 countries that are eligible. The amount for each project is relatively low, between $100,000 and $250,000, but ambitions are huge. The vision that Ignacio just described is one of the transformative ideas that TCP is supporting for escalation. The role of FAO is, of course, not to implement all those ideas, but to support governments in creating favorable conditions so that ideas can bloom and to be scaled. In the case of cooperatives, it means to support governments in coming up with new legislation, regulation, to train alliances that foster cooperatives, strengthening technical capability of public institutions, that foster that, identifying innovations and piloting in the case it's necessary, developing strategies and support programs to the sector, and of course mobilizing resources to fund this scale-up. I'd like to end up saying, and having worked for several years in cooperatives as well, that I share with Ignacio the vision that cooperatives are one of the most underutilized and underestimated forces to achieve the transformation we seek. The cooperatives do not need subsidies. They can compete perfectly well in free market. Cooperatives do not channel their profits to tax havens, but they reinvest those. Their surpluses are reinvested on the very territories where they operate. Profitability is not an end, it's a means to maximize the benefit of the members of such cooperatives. And the social responsibility is not a favor, but it's a requirement of the partners in these cooperatives. Since, as we all know, money talks, and for changes in behaviors that are needed in order to change agri-food systems to be massive and sustainable, we need a business model in which these behaviors are following a certain economic logic. So we need to take advantage of cooperatives because they exist. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. A very clear message, and I'd like to thank all panelists for providing your comments and the time requested. Now, moving on, let's move on to questions. As we get the questions in our chat and the chat box in our Zoom, I'd like to ask the representatives of the project teams about the community engagement components and network components of these projects. From your own experience and your own initiatives, what do you think the collaborative work with communities how do you think that work can reinforce the promotion of healthy diets and access to nutritious food in the region? Let's offer the floor to Najla first and then Ignacio. Najla, go ahead. Very good question. I think this challenge of having community engagement is the largest one, because when we talk about public policies, we are talking about a service that the state should deliver to people, which is not a favor, as Peter and Ignacio mentioned. It is a service in which we all taxpayers and citizens have the right to. So involving the community in our case, and the school is our space, our audience is students, parents. So we have a component in the school feeding programs that we consider sustainable, which is precisely community engagement. And I think there are innovations everywhere today. We we can even use these mechanisms that we have, like WhatsApp, podcasts, to deliver a message from the school to families and to communities, but also regionally, because more and more today, the issue of connectivity is being faced and results are being obtained. There are ways in which schools must be stimulated. It is a challenge, but not only in order to provide food at schools, but also to be part of the decision-making process that are based on this policy. So I think a challenge now is to develop a national policy with the countries, and a major directive of this national policy, based on our experience, should be to guarantee community engagement throughout the whole process, from the planning stage to execution phase, and even the assessment of such policy. I think that there are pathways, and we are making progress, but it's still a challenge. Thank you, Najla. Do you have comments on that? Please go ahead. Yes, thank you. Actually, there's a whole world of collaboration space linked to aspects in which cooperatives can have a positive impact. For example, on food insecurity. For many years, there have been cooperatives in different countries with different degrees of development. In some countries, in Europe, consumption cooperatives at the first places in terms of market share in retail, for example, and many times they are not known, but they are structured that supermarkets have a cooperative structure. But the idea is to replicate some of those practices that have uh, that idea in their DNA, which is to go back to the roots, to its origins, in terms of be food distributors. Many times, retail stakeholders that predominate in our region do not have food distribution as their main focus. It is linked with business models that have more to do with financial products mostly. So that alignment that has to do with supplying healthy food and accessible food to communities takes place in cooperatives because community cooperatives owners are the consumers themselves. They align all processes with the business model to achieve those objectives. And we have seen best practices, which is the Cooperativa Obrera, that has been in operation in Argentina for over 100 years, from the provinces to the rest of the territories that have shown in more than 150 store locations, all formats, from small market formats up to hypermarkets. They have been able to many times sustain local economies through their links with family farming as suppliers, and also articulating with communities and circular economy initiatives, and also food banks. So there's a lot to take in from those experiences, although the cooperative consumption model is not a massive model yet, but we should take advantage of some practices that may be easily adopted by the national retail chains, which has to do with having access to nutritious and diets at affordable prices for communities. And on the other hand, saying that the transformation of agri-food systems is not only approached from the production point of view, which is a traditional approach. The idea is to go beyond the chains and to have that permanent connection with consumption through these cooperatives, consumption cooperatives, and cooperative supermarkets, and those who provide services to the whole food supply chain. Thank you, Ignacio. Along the same lines, you've been discussing after these two experiences of RISE and the cooperatives agenda, are there challenges or gaps maybe? You were quite clear regarding that. And now we're going to go the opposite. Ignacio first. Please talk about the main gaps or challenges that you can see in the development of these collaborative processes, and how do you see you can overcome them, or are you considering to overcome them? Thank you. First of all, as Peter said, we need to highlight the importance of cooperatives as competitive stakeholders, but also sustainable stakeholders. So there are some gaps still to position the cooperative model as a current and future model. And basically there, we have set up historical alliances between FAO and cooperative associations nationally, regionally, and globally. The main association in the cooperative sector is led by an Argentinian cooperative member. So there are initiatives in the region to open up these alliances and collaboration to set up the cooperative model as not only as an effective, but also an efficient and sustainable alternative. And what we need to do, though, is to expand those alliances to cover other associations, other groups in the cooperative sector. We have worked with the agricultural and livestock cooperatives, but also wanted to introduce, for example, the reactivation of the American or Latin American sector of cooperatives through those spaces to close the access gaps, the public support gaps, and public policy gaps for the corporate world, with this objective of developing virtuous alliances. We wanted to take a first step through this technical cooperation project, but there's going to be more opportunity for scaling up these initiatives. Thank you, Ignacio. Thank you for your remarks. Najla, please go ahead. The major challenge we face today in the region in order to guarantee school feeding with quality or with legumes, meat, eggs, or fruits and vegetables, or whatever it's needed in order to face nutrition, overweight, learning, development issues, all the challenges of the policy itself has been this of being able to purchase food from local family farming providers. Maybe in the video you saw many schools, many students, because of school feeding is a market for these cooperatives, where these cooperatives can take their product. But not all countries are yet organized or with defined products. Neither the ministers of agriculture have a policies of favoring small producers, small farmers. And what we need is this organizational component among farmers and growers to facilitate that the educational market and the state market that is linked to education can purchase these products. If this is, whenever that's ready, we'll face other challenges. How to establish direct bidding mechanisms, easy access, good prices. There are other challenges, but the first big challenge to purchase fresh and natural food and true food, nutritious and savory food as well, is to be able to buy them. And cooperatives, I'd like to highlight this, the importance of this work that you develop in the sense of also looking at the potential that you can find, the wisdom of these people that show that there's a lot to learn. And when they are organized, this is very powerful. One last comment is that we were recently in Peru and in Brazil with international missions, and we have had the chance of meeting growers. It is different to meet a family grower compared to an association or a cooperative, because with the cooperative, we have so much more to tell, much more administrative support, much more structure. It is really a mechanism that can facilitate the lives of people out in the field. Our big challenge and our window of opportunity is to be able to buy from organized farmers. Thank you. Thank you, Najla, for your comment. And along the same lines, I would like to ask Paola, how from ABC you value community participation or engagement and networking as elements that strengthen sustainability and social impact of school feeding and nutrition programs. Go ahead, Paola. Thank you, Ulises. From the perspective of cooperation, we value that community engagement is key for networking. Once values are shared in this network, we will achieve sustainability in our actions. In our case of school feeding programs, we have shared values for the right to adequate food, to improve boys and girls' health. So, with this shared value, we will have strategic and integrated strategies and objectives that we will create social impact and a new reality. And this is what we want. Thank you, Paola, for your remarks. And we have a few questions that Catalina and Macarena have relayed to us from Zoom. There's one question for the school feeding programs. They talk about a, a concrete example of networking in rice. Could you please tell us more how it works in the countries? I'd like to offer Najla and Paola the chance of answering that. Go ahead, Najla.
I will begin, and maybe Paula can add to my comments. So what does the network do? It is not a legal entity. There are no institutional arrangements, but this is just the result of FAO Brazilian cooperation launched back in 2019. And the countries already had a network. They already had a network per se. They already had channels to cooperate and share. And so there were many ties already in place. So in 2014, at the second World Nutrition Conference, Brazil underscored its commitment to further develop 5 areas. One was school feeding. And so, taking advantage of the experience we have in cooperation, we called upon the countries to meet. But this was not about Brazil taking the lead, but rather facilitating discussions and dialogue in order to address the cross-cutting aspects of the school feeding program in a more general fashion, and to jointly share experiences and talk about the sundry daily challenges that we all have faced. And that's what we do. We work through the platform, providing training and good practices. And how can the countries join us or participate? Well, what they do is they will contact the Brazil FAO cooperation and request support, and then we invite them to take part in the various activities that we hold, and that is how it works. We have in 2024, though, we will be able to make this more international. Most likely, we'll be working through foreign affairs offices and letting other countries know that they are part of this international organized group. We will be sharing guidelines, and essentially we will be making available 15 years of experience in school feeding programs. Thank you, Nashla. Paula, any comments? I think it's important as well to underscore the technical missions, Najla, that we carry out with the countries. A specific example is how the RAES leaders are able to learn more about other school feeding programs during these missions. And the missioners, one could say, also refer to the best practices that they have learned about over the years, and they make these available. I think that is a very poignant example to share with you. Thank you. Excellent, Paula. Thank you so much. We have a question here for Ignacio Peter. It's from Walter Quintana, and he says, how do you manage or propose tackling the technological and technical gaps that are challenging for the various cooperatives and family farming communities with regard to gaining access to the market? I know that these challenges limit development and often are a roadblock for many actions. Thank you for that. That's very true. I know this is related to a lack of access and to markets and etc. Very challenging now in the world of cooperatives. It's actually a very interesting opportunity. For example, during the pandemic, there were a series of initiatives launched during the worst days of confinement, and these initiatives were launched by the agri-food cooperatives that provided these services in their own territory. So what does this mean? Well, thanks to these initiatives, the children were able to continue studying online, and there was connectivity for continuing to do their business. So the cooperatives did that. They often accelerate processes. They provide access to online connections in rural areas. In some countries, there are tax incentives that are enshrined under law. In other countries, the cooperatives provide tax benefits to their members. So I think there are interesting opportunities here for the cooperatives to provide these services. And this is all in part of their efforts to secure the greater good for their members. It's not just about connectivity for business transactions, but it's also about closing access gaps. Many of these populations and these groups are marginalized from business decisions because they simply do not have access to internet. For example, the gender gap and the rural youth gap. I believe that instruments that are able to provide them with access to digital tools are key, and the cooperatives help that. A lot of progress was made with regard to decisions taken at virtual assemblies. And thanks to connectivity, the cooperatives were able to continue functioning. And this provides an opportunity to these marginalized players. It's very obvious for rural women, for example. Often the assemblies call for quorum. As a result, they need to be in person. And these take place in capital cities, and it's very challenging for people to get there. And so women who have many responsibilities and do not have access to these initiatives are simply marginalized or disenfranchised. And digital tools can actually provide an interesting participatory opportunity. So several countries are launching national programs and projects to foster digital connectivity. And we have also worked with the FAO CELAC Chinese government project on pilot programs that aim to accelerate connectivity in rural regions while also accelerating access to competitive markets, high value, high added value markets for products of origin. And this has also made it possible for consumers to become more familiar with specific products that are part of a product skill program. And this benefits producers and others. So these are just some of the examples of what we're doing under the technical cooperation programs. Thank you, Ignacio. We have come to the end of this interesting experience, this interesting journey that inaugurates the FAO Transforms Fair with learning, discoveries, and connections. I just wanted to thank each of the panelists and the representatives of the resource partners who have accompanied us today, Peter, Naja, Paula, Ignacio, and others. I just wanted to quickly underscore some of the key comments by Peter, Najla, Paula, and Ignacio. We know that school feeding is a cross-cutting sectoral aspect that addresses food, nutrition, farming, family farming, specifically health. It also strengthens and contributes to achieving the SDGs. It has a nutrition approach, and I also wanted to focus on the 3 innovations: a virtual platform, the structure of the RAES program in Latin America and the Caribbean, and finally, the podcasts as an easily accessible tool. So Ignacio and Peter also talked about how family farming works all on its own. Or rather, as mentioned by the former president of Uruguay, it's marked by loneliness. And Peter said these cooperatives in the past maybe have been underutilized. And they both focused on key aspects of the FAO cooperatives agenda being fostered throughout the LAC region. They talked about how it's an inclusive, resilient program, and they have also referred to how this agenda has had an agri-food approach that fosters new laws that also constitutes a catalyst for business opportunities for the cooperatives, and that also provides a toolbox for the various countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. That's just a quick summary of some of the key points mentioned by our colleagues. And this first exchange of experiences undoubtedly seeks to inspire us with regard to the importance of collaborative and network work in order to address the challenges that the context currently is imposing on us with regard to our food systems. In order to make further progress in eradicating hunger, food security, and improving nutrition in all its forms, we must strengthen the spaces that facilitate active and effective linkages of communities in these processes. Recognition of FAO plays a fundamental role in generating connections with decision makers, and this collaboration is the key to moving forward together and to promoting a culture around these objectives. Moreover, both initiatives, the RAES and the Agenda for Agri-Food Cooperatives, demonstrate international cooperation strategies and sustainable work models. These strategies seek to strengthen community capacities and networks while also closing the digital divide in the region. Moreover, they enjoy significant support from the resource partners involved. Such initiatives provide fabulous opportunities for scalability and institutionalization through their incorporation into the public policies of the countries throughout the region. In this way, we see that the impact of these projects is amplified at various levels, both in the public sphere and in the communities. I would also like to underscore how these experiences illustrate FAO's role as an organization that has the possibility of connecting actors, ideas, experiences, and information. And that connection works as a network that enables the development and reinforcing of these systems as a foundation for fostering more effective interventions. Finally, despite the progress made, challenges remain and gaps that both call for solutions. Expanding access and outreach to food and nutrition programs remains a goal that we need to achieve while maintaining the inclusive approach that characterizes these initiatives and the institution in general. Thank you all very much for sharing this space with us. Next, we are going to take a short 5-minute break so that we will, following that, continue with the second part of the FAO Transform Fair today. Thank you.
Okay, we're back from our break. Hopefully you were able to take a break. Thank you very much to those who were part of the previous session where we learned about experiences related to better nutrition. The conduction of projects such as the ones we were able to learn about is undoubtedly a contribution to eradicate hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition in all its dimensions. Remember that at the end of the session, we'll be able to relive the experiences on the FAO Transforms Fair website. And we'll publish the details of each session. We will leave the link on the chat so you can easily access it also on our social networks. Now we will move on to the next set of experiences, 3 projects that relate to better environment. And for that, I'd like to introduce our chairperson, Maria Mercedes Proaño, who is the Climate Finance Officer of FAO's Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much, Maria Mercedes, for being with us, presenting these experiences today. Let's go with the video now.
Muchas gracias, Matías.
Thank you,
Bienvenidos.
Matías. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, speakers and online viewers. I'm very pleased to be chairing the Better Environment segment of presentations of the second version of the FAO Transforms Fair, which seeks to connect the valuable lessons and inspiring experiences that are developed within the framework of the 4 Betters of FAO. Today, we're at a critical point in our history when the environmental challenges facing our region and the world are more urgent than ever. Climate change, land degradation, biodiversity loss, and the need for more sustainable agri-food systems are issues that require our immediate attention and cooperation. During this segment, entitled Better Environment, we will address these challenges and more. Today, we have the chance of exploring a series of innovative experiences that seek a balance between environmental sustainability, production efficiency, and social inclusion, as well as securing economic income. From Uruguay, we will hear about how sustainable and climate-adapted livestock production and the recovery of degraded soils are being promoted. In Chile, we will learn about the National Climate Change Adaptation Plans, a pioneering effort in the region. And from Guatemala, we will learn about the conversion of degraded pastures to sustainable livestock production systems. These experiences reflect FAO's strategic framework, which advocates agri-food systems that mitigate the effect of climate change, promotes a balanced bioeconomy, and defends the importance of maintaining biodiversity and ecosystems for sustainable agriculture. A rich discussion awaits. Without further ado, let us begin with this segment, and I'm sure we'll leave you with valuable lessons and possible courses of action. The modality, just like the previous segment, it will be first presenting the videos of the experiences and then opening up for our panelists, both teams and representatives of FAO teams and representatives of the institutions and resource partners who have participated in our projects. They will have 5 minutes to provide relevant information on these projects, and later on we will open up for Q&A. So let's go now with the Livestock and Climate Project. We will travel to the fertile grasslands of Uruguay, a country known for its strong tradition in livestock production, and we'll learn about the experience financed by the Global Environment Facility, GEF, and developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Livestock, Agriculture and Fisheries of Uruguay. Let's go with the video now.
El proyecto Ganadería y Clima se planteó contribuir a enfrentar los desafíos del sector ganadero a través de un enfoque integral que abarca la mejora de la productividad y la sostenibilidad de los establecimientos ganaderos. El objetivo del proyecto es promover el aumento sostenible de la productividad y el ingreso en la producción ganadera y a la vez contribuir a mitigar el cambio climático, restaurando tierras degradadas en pastizales naturales y mejorando la resiliencia de los sistemas a través de un proceso de coinnovación con enfoque de género. En 3 años de trabajo de campo, el proyecto logró el aumento del 28% del ingreso neto familiar, con un 2% de disminución de los costos, el aumento del 8% de la producción de carne vacuna y 17% de la producción de carne ovina. Aumentó 6% el porcentaje de destete y de preñez y aumentó 6% el peso al destete. Mejoró un 64% el índice de buenas prácticas ganaderas. Se redujeron un 7% las emisiones totales de gases de efecto invernadero y un 18% las emisiones GEI por kilo de carne producida. Aumentó un 35% la altura de pasto y 7,4% la biodiversidad vegetal en comparación con los vecinos. Estos resultados son los insumos para el desarrollo de una estrategia nacional de ganadería climáticamente inteligente y un plan de mitigación para la ganadería que está diseñando el gobierno del país.
Muy interesante poder ver
This is very interesting to see results of such innovative and necessary projects as this experience originating in Uruguay. To tell us more about this project, I leave you with Soledad Bergos, National Project Coordinator for the FAO Uruguay representation. Let me remind the panelists that the intervention should last approximately 5 minutes, and I will have the ungrateful task of controlling this time. Go ahead, Soledad, all yours. Thank you, Maria Mercedes. It's a pleasure to be here with us, to be part of this fair, and to tell you about a project, Ganadería en Clima, that has been innovative in several aspects, and I hope it will also be an inspiring experience for other initiatives and other projects. In order to respect the time that Maria Mercedes is telling us that she will control, I will refer simply to some lessons learned and part of the legacy of the climate and that will be finishing soon. First of all, referring, let's see if lessons learned in this project, and I'd like to talk about 3 aspects that are cut across all of the components of the project. First of all, communication. I believe we all coincide in the need for communication, of having a strategy and defining the target audiences, what tools, what means are used. For example, in the case of livestock and climate that operates in the rural context, it worked a lot with local means for local media, but we need to think that we need to have a regional and international strategy if we want to disseminate those results. But I'd like to emphasize beyond this communication to outside, the communication inside the projects. Projects that have a large work team, such as this case of livestock and climate, that are quite scattered in the territory, they need to have an in-house communication strategy that is planned for and that allows for a good communication, a fluent, transparent communication, or a full communication, and along the whole project process throughout the life cycle, because that it prevents misunderstanding and enables the work for the different teams. Secondly, knowledge management. Projects tend to be a source of inspiration, continuous inspiration, in order to identify opportunities and lessons that are useful not only for the management of the project itself, because it is a result-based management, but also because this is useful knowledge for other projects and other initiatives. And although The assessment, the midterm and long-term assessments are instances in which lessons are learned and best practices are acquired. It is very difficult to collect the whole wealth of the project. And I believe project teams have a very important opportunity in there to manage knowledge and to report and record those lessons learned and those opportunities to learn from the very beginning and to document. That is to say, it's not only about collecting the lessons, but also to make them available for future initiatives. In the case of livestock and climate, a lessons learned document will be published that we hope will be useful for other initiatives. And a third component from projects is the gender approach. And this is not only about the importance of having a gender strategy that is planned from the very beginning, but how we exercise and how we connect this gender approach with the territories. We may have a great theoretical strategy, but we need to connect that with everyday life, and this means to apply it in a certain context with a specific cultural patterns. For example, the livestock and climate project is a project that took place in a very masculine environment, which is primary livestock sector in Uruguay, which is basically masculine sector. So this meant to think very well how, in terms of the territories where we operated, to consider these gender aspects in order to avoid the deepening of these inequalities. So this is yet another very important aspect and it has been for this project, and I believe it's also a lesson for other projects. Three components across the board considered from the beginning, from the design of the project: the communication, knowledge management, and a gender approach. That is regarding some lessons learned, and I'd like to cover the legacy, so to speak. By definition, a project it starts and ends, and there's a limited time window to it. So what's left? What survives the project? You have left with 1 minute. Okay. Okay, 1 minute. Institutionalization of the project. So how we design a exit strategy so that the outputs of the project are adopted by the partners and the institutions involved. It is very important to have the commitment of the stakeholders, and that commitment needs to be considered from the very beginning. You need to plan, you need to establish those networks, you need to build a trust so that the day the project is completed, the institutions and partners embrace the project and own the project. And the video mentioned a sustainable livestock strategy that has been adopted by the livestock ministry and will go beyond the project. That organized strategy is what guarantees sustainability of the project itself. So that is what I wanted to share. Basically, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about this very challenging project. And I'm now going to leave you with some pictures of this very interesting experience that I hope will be an inspiration to all of you. Thank you very much, Maria Mercedes. Thank you very much for your comments, Soledad. Very inspiring what Uruguay has done, especially in a region in which we know in South America, especially about the importance of livestock throughout Latin America. Now, I'd like to invite Veronica Duran, Head of Planning and Policies of the Agricultural Scheduling and Policy Office of Uruguay, to tell us about her experience from the government perspective. Please go ahead, Veronica.
Thank you, Maria Mercedes. As you mentioned during the presentation, as you know, Uruguay has a long-standing livestock tradition, and a project such as this one that we just heard described by Soledad related to livestock is very closely aligned with the strategic priorities and the objectives and goals, and also contributes information, knowledge to the country's policy. So I think that is one of the most important aspects, one of the most important legacies that we are securing through this project. As you know, Uruguay for decades now has been developing state-level policies related to natural resources, environmental protection, and managing natural resources sustainably through sundry regulations and other aspects. But a project such as this one also allows us to reinforce the policies that provide us scientific, quantifiable data with regard to how farmers and livestock producers, through specific tools and methodologies, can actually boost production, boost income, and have positive, favorable socio-environmental impacts. So again, this project has left an indelible mark for the livestock sector, and we know that greenhouse gas reduction is also key for this sector and for carbon sequestration. So this is a very important project, extremely relevant for the country, and also, again, safeguards smaller livestock producers that face more climate-related challenges. You know that the country is facing the worst prolonged drought, the worst in the last 100 years, and the farmers working in the livestock and climate project were able to better manage the drought than most of the other livestock producers. So we believe that this sheds some light on how to best reduce vulnerabilities and boost income, production capacity, and reduce GHG emissions impact. The projects, it is interesting that this project was carried out in a context marked by the worst drought in 100 years, and how actually this truly showcases even more so the successes of the project. And as Soledad just mentioned, we, from the state level, are relying on this significantly, and we're fostering our reporting and monitoring actions and then policies in other areas. Now, this was possible through GEF support, but at the same time, it is founded on one of Uruguay's strengths, one of our institutional strengths. This was also because there's a very positive relationship between the Ministry of the Environment, of Livestock and Fisheries, and the rest of the institutions. Our institutional arrangements in terms of climate change are quite robust and with regard to climate actions. And these strengths, these founding organizations have allowed us to have cross-institutional implementation with significant benefits for the livestock sector. And in addition to the Ministry of Livestock, we saw great participation by the academic sector as well. And I wanted to make sure that this was pointed out. It's important for the countries to be aware of this because we have taken advantage of the various synergies and advantages that a project such as this one has provided. So in short, the legacy of this project and the exit strategies for the country are quite phenomenal. This is a virtuous cycle. We in Uruguay have received valuable, scientific, quantifiable information with regard to the good practices implemented by the livestock sector and the reproductive livestock sector specifically. And again, as I've mentioned several times, this has had a positive impact on income, boosting productivity, and also boosting diversity within the sector. This has also had a positive impact on reducing the greenhouse gas inventory nationwide. We have been able to scale up these activities as well nationwide with support by the actual livestock sector per se. And within the framework of the project, you are running out of time. 1 minute. Okay, thank you. Yes, please. please wrap up. I'm wrapping up. There have been other key inputs related to the project. For example, a livestock mitigation plan to secure more sustainable livestock in Uruguay and sustainable climate smart livestock as well. Now, all of this is in addition to the lessons learned, recommendations, and the evidence. All of this will allow the country continue down this long-term path towards more success. You also know that last year, the country issued a sovereign bond in the financial market in order to have more sustainable finances, and these indicators are related to the country's various interests and meeting environmental goals. So programs that bring about scientific evidence allow us to be further aligned among the various social, productive, environmental, and economic policies. In other words, I wanted to commend the project partners and FAO and Minister Matos for having chosen this project as an inspiring experience, because it truly is. So thank you. Thank you, Veronica. We're very pleased to hear your remarks, particularly because livestock in this region is one of the main sources of food. And Uruguay has shown us that it is possible to have resilient, sustainable, low emissions livestock that will also boost income and benefit women and young people. It is truly an excellent example. So thank you for your testimony. Now we are going to change courses a bit. We are going to head toward Chile. Chile is facing significant challenges such as extreme weather events and climate variability. Also, it's important to bear in mind our long coastline, but these challenges can also represent opportunities for transformation. So, having said that, we looked for an initiative funded by the Green Climate Fund, the GCF, and we will talk about that. And this was a project developed in conjunction with the Ministry of the Environment and the FAO. I'm referring to the National Adaptation Plans. So I would like to now show you a video that tells the story of this experience.
El cambio climático tiene efectos tangibles sobre la seguridad alimentaria, nutrición, pobreza y sistemas agroalimentarios de América Latina y el Caribe. Estos impactos repercuten en la producción y medios de vida rurales y en la producción agrícola, dado una menor superficie cultivable, la sequía y escasez de agua, la pérdida de tierras costeras, entre otros. Hoy en día, se juega la capacidad de asegurar alimentos, erradicar la pobreza y lograr un desarrollo sostenible y resiliente en América Latina y el Caribe en un contexto de aumento de la población y de crisis climática. Es por ello que tanto la reducción de emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero como la adaptación a los impactos futuros en distintos niveles es clave. En este contexto, los planes de adaptación al cambio climático representan instrumentos fundamentales en favor de la acción climática. Chile ha avanzado integrando armoniosamente sus planes con las políticas públicas relevantes en materia climática, tales como la Estrategia Climática de Largo Plazo 2050, la contribución determinada a nivel nacional y la Ley Marco de Cambio Climático. Este proceso comenzó hace más de 10 años con la primera generación de planes de adaptación, incluyendo un plan nacional y 6 planes sectoriales. Con el apoyo de la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura, FAO, y el financiamiento del Fondo Verde del Clima, Chile está actualizando algunos de estos planes y desarrollando nuevos, como el Plan Sectorial de Recursos Hídricos. Para junio de 2024, se espera que Chile haya desarrollado un nuevo Plan Nacional de Adaptación al Cambio Climático, junto a 12 nuevos planes sectoriales. Esta labor ha generado una serie de lecciones aprendidas, desde la fase de integración de los planes de adaptación con las políticas públicas, el diseño de estos instrumentos y la búsqueda de financiamiento para su futura fase de implementación. Un aspecto fundamental que ha caracterizado este proceso ha sido la participación activa de múltiples actores y partes interesadas en las discusiones y talleres, integrando a cientos de actores clave y de gran influencia en las 16 regiones del país, entre los que destacan grupos de mujeres y pueblos indígenas. Las lecciones aprendidas de estas experiencias han sido compartidas con otros países de la región y se espera que sirvan de guía para que estos puedan avanzar de forma similar al caso de Chile. Los resultados obtenidos a la fecha representan un logro clave para Chile en avanzar en adaptación al cambio climático a nivel nacional. Esto solo ha sido posible gracias a la coordinación y generación de sinergias entre diferentes instituciones e instrumentos de política pública del país.
Muchísimas gracias por la presentación del video.
Thank you for that video. It's interesting to see how a country plans for climate change adaptation in highly vulnerable areas. In that regard, I would like to ask Rodrigo Vasquez, who's a specialist in climate change adaptation and in water resources at FAO Chile. I would like to invite Rodrigo to talk a bit more about this process. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, Rodrigo. I hope I do not go over the time. Thank you, Maria Mercedes. Well, I think the video speaks for itself. I would just like to highlight a few key aspects that the Ministry of the Environment has carried out, among other aspects. First of all, I wanted to mention how important this fair is. We know that climate change affects all sectors across the board. Some sectors are more impacted, though. For example, food security is a key concern. And rural issues, for example, rural issues are more vulnerable to climate change. Sorry, rural areas are more vulnerable to climate change, and there are other sectors that are even more vulnerable. For example, those people living in rural sectors know how vulnerable they are, and then there are subgroups within those rural sectors that are even more vulnerable, such as indigenous groups and women. I'm sure the same is in many other countries throughout the LAC region. Therefore, the challenges are enormous, and I would say that the best solution is working together towards concrete solutions. We have been working with the Chilean government, supporting this initiative so that they can underscore their ambitions with regard to moving forward in this area. Also, economics come into play here because these plans exist for the purpose of having better adaptation to the effects of climate change, but also because there are many studies and figures out there, some that we really like to refer to, is that when we invest $1.8 billion in climate change actions, we are saving more than $7 billion around the globe. So these programs result in savings in dollars and cents as well. Now, we also know that these are transformative experiences. Allow me to mention the key partnership with the government and the institutions involved, led by the Ministry of the Environment and the Green Climate Fund. We work with the Undersecretary of Finance as well, the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Public Works. All of these organizations have played a key role, among others. Linking this to public policy is key as well. We have key instruments already committed for Chile, for example, the long-term climate change adaptation strategy, for example, and the Chile's NDC, for example. As mentioned, there was a first generation of adaptation plans. They were very valuable. And now we have the second generation of adaptation plans. Some of the previous ones are updated, but we have new plans as well, such as the Water Resource Plan. And these are all transformative in that they are fostering participatory processes, cross-cutting processes. The role of women is being underscored, the role of indigenous peoples as well. All of this is closely tied to Chile's national public policies. There are more technical issues worth mentioning, but I'm just not going to refer to those. For example, monitoring and assessment, evaluation and monitoring activities are also in place to make sure the plans are rolling out well. We're working closely with the private sector. We are building capacity among the different sectors. So it's all quite valuable. And again, has been a transformative experience related to climate change adaptation policies. And that's what I have for you. Thank you. Thank you, Rodrigo. It's very important to learn about the impacts that are not directly related to climate action planning, but rather the side or additional impacts. We would also like to learn what the government has to say. That's why we are calling on Maritza Jariveric, who is from the Climate Change Adaptation Department of the Ministry of the Environment. So go ahead, Maritza Jariveric. Thank you, Maria Mercedes. It's nice to greet you all today.
We're very much aligned with Rodrigo. I would say he could have been somebody speaking on behalf of the ministry. We have very similar ideas. So we have been working together for a while already. I will also tell you our view of how this adaptation process has taken place and the evolution we have seen lately. We've been working with FAO for over 4 years in supporting with support from GEF, and that one of the requirements, some of the requirements are things that we agreed. For example, considering issues of funding, gender, indigenous population, etc. These are the ideas that have emerged regarding policy and that are also reflected by the GEF forms as requirements. So these have been reinforcement we have received and through FAO that is supporting us in development of the plans. But this is a process that has been going on for a while. Chile started this work in developing adaptation processes when the Ministry of the Environment was created in 2010, and we at the time we identified 9 sectors that were the most vulnerable that should develop adaptation plans. And since then, we started producing information, and we came up with a plan per year since 2013. So we came up with a national adaptation plan that considered across the board issues such as knowledge management, awareness of the citizens, and different aspects across all sectors, and also providing a common adaptation conceptual framework. And the 9 sectors that were defined were the forestry, biodiversity, fisheries and aquaculture, healthcare, infrastructure, energy, tourism, cities, and water resources, which is one of the most important plans for the country, given the issue that affects Chile, which is basically, or the most important one, is the water scarcity, water deficit. So since we launched these programs and along the way in 2021, the climate change law was enacted that formalizes these plans and mandates its update by 2024 or the preparation of new plans for 2024. The law added 3 more sectors that must develop plans for coastal areas, transportation, and mining. The law also defines the sectors that must conduct mitigation work, which are 7 sectors that coincide with those. It's optional to do them jointly or not. So there are 5 sectors that will have their own mitigation and adaptation plan jointly: transportation, energy, cities, infrastructure, and mining. Um, and the law also establishes a regulated process. It defines the responsible institutions, deadlines, and a number of aspects that are an added framework. And in general, what they do is to formalize what we had already been doing. Besides, the regulations were done by us based on the experience in the preparation of the plans that we already had. So, in this new planning cycle that has been going on for years already, there are 12 in total, and 8 of them are updates. So out of those, we have lessons learned that have been also due to an assessment process that we've done for all of them. We need a monitoring system that allows us to follow up the progress of these plans, and we do an annual report by identifying gaps that hindered the implementation of these plans. Most of them achieved a significant degree of implementation until the law was enacted, but one of the main gaps was funding for these measures and monitoring with more specific metrics so we could um, assess goals and also assess investments to be done. This is one of the aspects in which we have been focusing significantly, which is have metrics with a cost assessment by identifying the funding sources from the very beginning, from the design of the plans. Other lessons learned also in things that have emerged in time and that have also been enshrined in the climate change law is introducing the gender approach, the ancestors, ancient knowledge, introducing nature-based solutions as much as possible, and also considering the coordination and risk disaster management. That's why this update, together with FAO of the National Adaptation Plan, which is the one that provides the guidelines for this sector, we are developing specific guidelines so that, for example, developing nature-based solutions, doing this. We also introduced so that we can introduce that information and develop measures in this sector. You have 1 minute. Another challenge that we are adopting in this new planning cycle is integrating the private sector, and we are discussing different mechanisms about, for example, public and private alliances and discussions such as clean production initiatives. There's a number of options that in each sectoral plan is being discussed. Another step forward is the assessment vulnerability in a more systematic way by using the impact chain methodology and using the tool that we created, which is the climate risk atlas that allows us to analyze risks. The idea is for this information to be used in all plans and also develop even more information that is introduced into the tool. The other important aspect that we must make progress in is monitoring. We have learned a lot in terms of how to define the indicators, how to agree on those, and we will have a platform that will facilitate channeling the information and the preparation of the reports. We also, but the fact of having a climate strategy in the long term also makes a distinction compared to previous plans that did not have a long-term horizon. Climate strategy now defines goals and objectives for 2050, and our sectoral adaptation plans need to consider those goals and in time to cover those, achieving them by 2050. And finally, what I'd like to highlight is that the law also strengthens the participatory processes of the different stakeholders in developing the plans, something that we have always considered important, but that we're strengthening right now, especially from the point of view of diagnostic of vulnerabilities in order to define the measures and to look for solutions. In all those stages, we are considering early engagement processes. So that knowledge supplements the science that takes place in parallel as the basis in order to support our plans. There's so much more to say, but I believe I'm running out of time.
Pero
Thank
muchísimas
you.
gracias.
But thank you, Marisa, for sharing these experiences and mainly the priority that the Chilean government has allocated to planning and introducing climate change criteria in the territorial planning is what allows us to address the impact that climate change will have in the different sectors. So I'd like to thank you for your engagement and Marisa's testimony of the Chilean government, and Rodrigo from FAO Chile will have time to discuss this. We're also receiving some questions in our chat box, both in YouTube and Zoom, so there'll be more time for Q&A. Just in closing now, we will travel to the heart of Central America, specifically Guatemala, where I had the chance of being last week. They are facing a growing threat of soil degradation, a problem that threatens both biodiversity and the livelihoods of a number of farming communities. We have the privilege of delving into a Guatemalan project which has been developed through collaboration between the Korean International Cooperation Agency, COICA, and FAO Guatemala. Let's watch the next video. Please go ahead.
Héctor Salguero ha vivido 45 años en San Francisco, municipio perteneciente al departamento de Petén, y ha sido quien ha presenciado en carne propia los campos en sus distintos estados. El agricultor destaca que dentro de las grandes extensiones de terreno, lo que más se ve son zonas ganaderas. Al caminar por el sur de Petén, se pueden corroborar las palabras de Héctor. Hay grandes zonas deforestadas que han sido utilizadas para fines agrícolas y ganaderos. Con la ilusión de recuperar el suelo y mejorar así sus medios de vida, algunas familias ganaderas implementaron prácticas de restauración de paisajes forestales.
Las tierras ya no están produciendo lo que producían antes para el ganado. Es lo mismo, la misma situación. El ganado ya no tiene la misma fertilidad que tenía antes. El ganado se engordaba rápido y se obtenía uno su ganancia y ya estaba. Pero ahorita no, ahorita lleva un periodo de tiempo muy largo. Por los mismos pastos, que ya los pastos se deterioraron. Y ya uno querer invertir para volver a hacer tierra nueva otra vez, eso ya lleva un proceso.
Para lograr este fin, la familia de Héctor se integró al proyecto de adaptación de comunidades rurales a la variabilidad y cambio climático para mejorar su resiliencia y sus medios de vida en Guatemala, que cuenta con la asistencia técnica de la FAO y el financiamiento de la Agencia de Cooperación Internacional de Corea, COICA. A través del proyecto, se realizó un análisis de las condiciones del terreno de Héctor, 23 hectáreas de tierras visiblemente degradadas, para realizar un plan de restauración adecuado a sus necesidades y condiciones. Desde que Héctor apostó por la restauración de su sistema de producción ganadera, ha trabajado para cuidar y mantener los árboles de alto valor comercial que se plantaron. Hoy, la reconversión empieza a ser visible. El calor deja de ser sofocante. Los sistemas hídricos se refuerzan y se prevé producción de semillas forestales. En la comunidad, la experiencia de don Héctor es reconocida e inspiradora como un modelo de conservación y uso sostenible de la tierra, el agua y la biodiversidad.
Es muy inspirador.
How inspiring is to learn about stories like Hector's, which make And they show why it is important to make a different bet on the restoration of a sustainable use of ecosystems. In order to learn more about this experience, let me leave you with my colleague Ogden Rodas. He's the project director. Let me remind you that these interventions must take 5 minutes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Maria Mercedes. I would like to add to the remarks that we heard in the video regarding Hector's experience to mention that this experience was part of a rural community climate change adaptation project in different sectors throughout Guatemala. This was in response to the needs expressed by agroforestry producers who have been affected by a variety of different events in the country. Events that affect agricultural, livestock, forestry, production. Unfortunately, the speaker's internet connection is unstable. The interpreters will do their best. And there's background interference. This is an FAO project co-funded by COICA. It is aimed at implementing overall strategies involving forestry restoration to recover land that is used for forestry, for agriculture, for livestock. This is also part of a program managed by the Guatemalan Forestry Service. Moreover, this relates to an income diversification strategy, income strengthening strategy by way of small-scale agri-forestry product entrepreneurial activities in order to add value to the producer's activities and support the productive infrastructure. The other cross-cutting component is training, political dialogue, related adaptation and mitigation as well. Moreover, this project has enabled engaging two antagonistic sectors, forestry and livestock. Why are they antagonistic? Because both sectors tend to compete for the same space. You can't have forestry if you have livestock. That is the traditional thought. But we have seen that, thanks to this project, there has been greater awareness. And also, the crisis context has led to a drop in meat prices. And in the early stages of the project, the communities weren't so involved. The video doesn't actually say this, but the Hector's children are young, and they, for a variety of different reasons, decided to recover their lands. In the past, they had forestry lands that were deforested and then used for livestock activities. So when they were presented with the option to recover their forestry lands with multi-purpose tree species and to boost their pastures, they became involved because they saw that there were income opportunities here in 6 to 10 years, depending on the modality chosen. So this project involved other incentives such as technical assistance, guidelines for implementing infrastructure, etc. And so his children were convinced that it was a good idea to become involved. He also decided to work closely with his children and replicate these actions in other plots on his property. So we can see how this activity is scalable. Paula has been talking about this type of experiences and how these can be replicated under other projects that we are actually rolling out with support by the Green Climate Fund in Guatemala. This is something else that will be replicated under another project hosted by the UE, the European Community. And this forestry restoration process has also allowed us to adopt regenerative livestock activities and conservation activities. This, coupled with other approaches and practices, such as protein banks or improving rainwater collection activities for irrigation, has been key. Moreover, this has also fostered trade union activities for bringing the products to market. As far as livestock management is concerned, we are also aiming to roll out genetic improvement activities. You have 1 minute. Thank you. And taking advantage of smaller tree diameters. So with all of this, we have boosted capacity and resilience of the small and medium-sized producers' livelihoods. We have had positive impacts on landscape. We have recarbonized the soil, and we have also boosted the self-esteem of the livestockers who have been affected by various activities. And we have seen that thanks to restorative forestry activities, the landscape and the quality of the soil has also been improved. So thank you for your support and for listening. Thank you, Ogden, for your remarks and for your leadership as well. In this specific case, we are joined by Kevin Samayoa, who is COICA's project coordinator. He's here to give us his impressions of the project. Go ahead, Kevin. Thank you, Maria Mercedes. Greetings to all of you. Greetings from the Korean International Aid or Cooperation Agency with headquarters in Guatemala. COICA has several different strategic areas of work, and one of these, and perhaps one of the most recent one, is climate change-related activities. And the project that we're talking about today was actually is being implemented through FAO, and it was part of the first project in Guatemala related to climate change. That's why at COICA, we truly value all of the expertise that has been generated, and not just by and through you as an implementing agency, but also by and through the government agencies here in Guatemala. We know that this is key given the impact that these projects, the potential impact that these projects have. COICA has worked through bilateral relations through the government, but it's also possible for COICA to work through an implementing agency such as FAO in this case. Now, why have we been working with FAO? Well, because COICA views FAO as a strategic partner, specifically given the competitive advantage that FAO has enjoyed for many years now. And in Guatemala, specifically, FAO has a wealth of experience in project implementation, not just adaptation or mitigation projects, but also projects related to other sectors such as food security, nutrition security. And that's why COICA trusts this agency for implementing the project. And this project is aligned with COICA's needs and strategies and with the various government policies as well. As mentioned, there's a mandate that we need to respect. And this project meets the needs addressed and outlined by the government through the planning department and other instruments. Now, specifically, let me refer to the impact of this project. We have had a good experience thus far in implementing this project. The project wraps up in November, but as Ogden mentioned, as a result of this positive experience, we have also begun implementing another copycat project, one could say, a project that copies several of the activities already carried out. This is also part of a Green Climate Fund, Resilient Climate Action. And in short, the original product has had a positive trickle-down effect. And with regard to field actions and working with the people, we have coordinated monitoring activities with FAO, and the main impact on the rural communities has been a change in mindset. That, in our opinion, is key. Hector Salguero and I were talking about this, and we are so pleased to see how he was able to change his mindset and his family's mindset from moving from exploitation type livestock towards regenerative livestock. All of this will have a better impact on how sustainable livestock activities are carried out in the Petén area. But again, let me mention that this is a larger, broader project, and COICA has seen that there are other advantages, for example, how FAO linked the project's activities with forestry incentives given by the government. These allow for midterm sustainability with producers, and there are different economic benefits as well provided by the government to reduce negative activities. You have 1 minute. Okay, thank you. I can also refer to how income has grown overall. So in addition to being successful on many different fronts, FAO has also focused on boosting the added value of many agricultural products that were just sold as raw material in the past. Many producers have been able to add value to their agricultural products and thus boost their income. In short, these are the key impacts, a very quick summary of the most important impacts. So we have had a very good experience, and we have seen a change in the mindset of most of the producers who have benefited from this action. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin from COICA. It's nice to hear how agriculture and livestock can be resilient, sustainable, and adapt to climate change, and at the same time bring about benefits for the communities, for livelihoods, boost income, provide new income. So these are what we call the co-benefits related to climate change actions, all favoring better environment and overall better livelihoods for all. All right, then, we are receiving some of your questions and comments. In the meantime, I would like to thank all of you for your remarks with regard to securing resilient and sustainable agriculture throughout the region. Now, let me refer to some questions. The first is for Soledad and is related to the communication mechanism, Soledad. Now, what concrete tools or mechanisms have you used during the different stages of the project to boost communications? Was one of these perhaps a communications assessment conducted preliminarily? Go ahead, Soledad. Thank you, Maria Mercedes. Yes, in fact, we conducted a preliminary assessment of the situation and of the different public objectives. As I mentioned, there's a very widespread projects spread throughout the territory, and it was implemented with livestock producer families and through producer associations and partners at the institutional level, within academia as well, through the School of Agriculture and Engineering. And so we launched a communication strategy to meet the needs of the various target audiences. For example, when we chose the producers, we specifically asked them how they found out about the program and what measures, what tools, means they would use in the rural areas in Uruguay to learn about this different topic. For example, the radio was underscored as a key means of communication, and then of course, virtual means. Now, the project launched its field activities at the same time that the pandemic occurred, and it was, as a result, necessary to rework many different aspects, and the virtual realm took on more importance than we originally thought. So at the very beginning of the overall activities, we had to make many different changes, and along the way as well. I would also like to underscore how there was a great deal of communication with communication specialists from other partner institutions, with the FAO, with the GAF, in order to reach a wider audience, and with producer associations. We did not have many resources earmarked for communications, and thanks to the connections, we were able to multiply the resources and the results. And the WhatsApp groups also at the family producer level were key. There was a special WhatsApp group for women as well. And then local media outlets as well played a key role. And at the national level, we worked with written and spoken press as well. We also defined a schedule for launching communications. Some key events were launched. For example, there was a national agricultural and livestock event, and we leveraged that event to refer to the project and some of the products of the project. And with the partners, email was more important, or WhatsApp. So it really depended on the target audience, the specific communications tool selected. So there were 3 levels. Within the project, beyond the project for different target audiences, and within the partners themselves. Thank you so much for that, Soledad. Now we have a question for Maritza. Maritza, how should the climate change and sustainability actions be prioritized on government agendas? What would your recommendation be?
Well, in our case, and it's defined by our framework law, but it could also be an example for other governments that may not have legislation about it. For example, including it in the public policy review processes that are not may refer to climate change, but that might need amendments. We're doing that in all sectors, that each sector should check their own public policies and determine whether those policies need to be amended depending on the emphasis or priorities, because there are activities that need to be adapted. So adaptation, we are studying it in that way, depending on regions and districts. So we ask regions to review their regional strategies so that the necessary adjustments be made. It's a process that is not only addressed through a specific plan or concrete actions, but it should have an impact on other public policies. And we also have the mandate from the law that adaptation and mitigation should be part of the environmental impact assessment of projects. So those who propose projects, they need to check a climate change impact on their projects, and what impacts of climate change may also be increased or worsened by their presence in a certain territory. And they also must propose adaptation measures when submitting their environmental impact assessment. The same thing applies to territorial assessment tools. They should also consider the climate change risk variable and also the need to mitigate emissions. So we have the possibility, according to the law, of introducing this across the board, not only in terms of climate change specific policies, but in all policies that may require a climate change approach, because they will be affected anyway. This is what I could say. I don't know if I am. Yes, quite clear, Maritza. The Chilean experience helps us. Other countries where being able to come up with a climate change law is still a major challenge. We have a question for Veronica, Veronica Duran. We would like to know if there are any perspectives to scale up a project to a more national context. I understand the livestock climate project was mostly for certain territories. And the question is, what would be the perspective of expanding it to the entire country? Are you there, Veronica?
Nos acompaña Verónica, por favor.
Well, Soledad, if you have any ideas about it. Yes, yes. Veronica had to leave to attend another meeting. Now, as to scaling up this project, this is something that we've been working on. In fact, there are two projects, one that is starting, and to scale this up, considering the lessons learned from livestock and climate and the results. But as Veronica said, was so important, and as we saw in the video, it is important to quantify aspects, not only in terms of production, but also social and environmental in nature. So there are tools that are based on science in order to do this scaling up. An important measure of that scale up is the sustainable livestock strategy that will define an action plan, and most of all, a very important aspect, which is a national outreach system to scale and to expand this approach towards a sustainable livestock management nationwide. Thank you, Soledad. Thank you for helping us with those questions. Now we have a question for our partner from COICA. Are you there, Kevin? Yet? Yes. Yes. Question for you, Kevin. The question is, in your opinion, what do you think are the aspects that should be prioritized in the international cooperation agendas around climate change?
Realmente, este ya es como una
This is
opinión
mostly a personal opinion. I think a problem that we see in cooperation for climate change projects is the fact not knowing the needs that exist in the receiving country. It is important to be aligned with the policies that the administrations of the countries have already established, that the countries have established, and start from that baseline and to come up with projects and activities that will help implement this in the field. Many times we make the mistake of believing that because of the experience in other countries that we have a solution, but the reality of the communities is very specific. And so we need to consider in each one of the projects that we run, regardless of whether they refer to climate change or other topics, to consider the opinion and the initial opinion that needs to be developed in the communities where these projects will have to be implemented. Thank you, Kevin. That is a bottom-up approach from the community, and it's very important. And we thank you for we have one last question for the FAO teams, considering that FAO Chile and FAO Guatemala have different realities. But the question is, what strategies could be implemented in order to build that balance between economic value and to continue towards the sustainable use of ecosystems? I don't know if Ogden or Rodrigo could answer that. Maria Mercedes, Ogden. I'm on the road. Well, there will be interaction as long as some conservation activities may create some income.
Siempre van a estar interesados por hacer conservación, pero también van a necesitar que esa actividad de conservación
That conservation activity needs to create some income for their productive unit. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to adopt. So as long as they demonstrate that the conservation activity, the productive activity, I believe that at the level of a productive unit. Maria Mercedes, floor is yours. Thank you, Ogden. Maybe from FAO Chile. It is this type of plans, these are national plans. It's connected to other plans that connect with regional programs. In that sense, the very nature of the plan it is born of environmental sustainability, and it's more adapted, or it's more resilient, or less vulnerable. That's why it is applicable to more vulnerable populations that are part of the process, starting from the early engagement process, improving their social well-being. And as we said at the beginning, all these plans are investments.
Específicamente en tema económico, todos los planes que se están
All
actualizando
the plans that are being updated include issues related to different costs to prioritize and to, in fact, know what things can be done and which one should be postponed, and maybe funding plan to see how these measures are funded from the government, or establishing public-private partnerships. It is in the nature of all these plans to achieve balance among these three topics. Thank you from FAO Chile. Oh, and with that, we close or start closing this segment. I'd like to thank the panelists, the participants in this part of the Transforma Fair, and to the audience. We are getting to the end of this block focused on sustainable and resilient agriculture for a better environment. I would like to begin by thanking our panelists for their valuable contributions and shared experiences, and especially the representatives of government and international cooperation agencies that collaborate with FAO present today. Each initiative presented today illustrates a comprehensive approach to regenerating degraded spaces, mitigating adverse environmental effects, and adapting to future climate change scenarios. These efforts are critical to charting a sustainable and resilient path for our communities and agri-food systems. From FAO, we reiterate our commitment and responsibility to address the environmental challenges that threaten the security of our agri-food systems. With examples such as those that we have seen today, we do have technical capabilities and human capital needed to address these challenges effectively. However, the road is long and the challenges remain. That is why it's so crucial to commit to sustainable practices that will ensure food for future generations. Our work at FAO is deeply aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and the projects presented today are an example of how we are making progress towards achieving these goals. That is why these projects contribute to the targets or objectives of the SDG 13, which promotes urgent action to combat climate change and its effect, and SDG 15, which seeks to protect, restore, and promote the sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. In closing, I want to emphasize that these efforts are collective. We need each other to build a more sustainable and resilient future. Thank you all for your participation and contribution in this block. Matías, the floor is yours. Thank you, Maria Mercedes. I'd like to thank all participants and panelists. During this day, we had the opportunity of learning about experiences related to better nutrition. We met two projects. The first one related to healthy foods in schools and habits formation in the school community through an online platform and teacher training, RISE. And the second project were the agri-food cooperatives projects, which are promoting digital transformation and technological entrepreneurship in production. Both projects seek sustainability and improvement of food systems. The second part, we were able to share knowledge extracted from the experiences related to a better environment, where we learned about Uruguay's experience in sustainable livestock farming, and also from Chile and its effort to adapt to climate change through participatory sectoral plans, and from Guatemala, where the experience that seeks the recovery of degraded pastures through silvopastoral systems was explained. Each project addresses environmental and sustainability challenges in an innovative, collaborative manner. It is exchanging ideas and inspiring projects. We witnessed how collaboration and determination can drive a meaningful change in our food systems and in building a more sustainable future. The projects presented inspire, at least myself, and they remind us that we can tackle our region's most pressing challenges. We say goodbye for today. We'll stop here. We'll invite you for tomorrow at 10 a.m. again to get to know other initiatives that will transform Latin America and the Caribbean, where we will check initiatives that have to do with improvements in the same teams at FAO, and also projects that are framed by better production, which is one of the main pillars of our strategic framework. You can check the website for more information about each one of the experiences and share your impressions through social networks using hashtag Feria FAO Transforma to continue the conversation online. Thank you very much for your participation and dedication. See you tomorrow.